A number of large ports around the country are navigating some troubled waters at the moment. Australia's second largest stevedore operator, DP World, will see workers at Brisbane, Sydney and Fremantle take industrial action, causing some disruptions to the supply chain. An 11th hour negotiating meeting last night has seen some industrial action reduce in scope. Paul Zalai is the founder and director of Freight and Trade Alliance, and he's online now this afternoon. Paul, good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
For those who haven't been following this issue closely, because I'm sure that people across the state don't understand what's going on, can you recap how we ended up here and what the main problems are?
Yeah, okay. So as you said, DP World, they're one of the stevedores in Australia, one of the major players, handling about 40%. For your listeners' benefit, if they're not sure, stevedore's responsibility is to load and unload our vessels bringing containerised cargo in and out of the country. So they have enterprise bargaining arrangements with DP World with its employers. The negotiations started in March of last year, but as you suggested, in September last year, legal protected industrial action commenced, and that has progressed during ongoing negotiations to where we are today. So what started off as just, I suppose, some niggling issues for the industry, it's just compounded over time now, and we've got some serious issues that we're facing.
I know that there are a lot of farmers who are concerned about this because they are potentially having to try and get stock products shipped. They need to look at where they can get them out of. They're not going to sit in cold rooms or cold trucks somewhere. What industrial action is planned so far?
Okay, so as you indicated too, the unions have eased some of the planned action that was scheduled for the weekend and this week ahead. That's been welcome, but it's still causing these ongoing problems and a lack of predictability, mainly with the international shipping lines. So we've seen a lot of what they call blank or cancelled voyages that were planned for Australia, and even those that are coming to Australia, they are bypassing a lot of ports because of that congestion, and they will be discharging their imports at another port. For example, they might pass Port Botany and discharge in Melbourne, and then the importer has to bring that cargo back to Sydney. Now, from an exporter perspective, they've got no predictability. They're sitting in regional centres there. They've got bookings with rail to move large volumes of containers to the port, and they just don't know if there's going to be a ship there to receive the goods. Now, they have to book those slots for the rail in advance. So, they're left between a rock and a hard place. Do they cancel those slots, or do they take them? And if they do take them, what they're doing quite often is instead of taking them straight to the wharf and to the ship for export, they're having to store them in metropolitan Sydney and then do a secondary road movement to the rail when a ship's ready to receive cargo.
So will we see a disruption which could lead to increased consumer costs?
Yeah, look, on the import side, there's no doubt about it. So I think what you'll see with those cancelled voyages coming up, I think some of the retail sector would have to be running short on stock at some stage. They just won't get the predictability and what they were expecting in the weeks ahead. So unless they've got some reasonable stockpiles here, we will see shortages. That will lead to increased costs going forward as well. This, combined with the issues that we're seeing in the Red Sea, the hostilities there, the weather conditions in the Panama, other geopolitical tensions, it's going to force importers to revisit their just-in-time models. And they will, I think, going forward, will have a lot more stock onshore, which again isn't ideal because warehousing capacity is at a premium, and that will come at a high cost. And those costs will have to flow on to the consumers.
Is there any sense of a resolution in the near future?
Look, who knows?
Rugby crystal ball.
We've got a situation now where the federal government, their narrative has been that they want the parties to sort this out.
Yeah.
The Fair Work Commission had a look at this before Christmas. DP World asked for a 90-day cooling off period. The Fair Work Commission looked at the circumstances at the time and said, no, DP World, you just keep going, keep negotiating. So really the ball's in the court of DP World at the moment. They've got to work out whether they bite a bit of pride and maybe give a bit more in the negotiations, or they play hardball and either have a prolonged action here or maybe even resort to something as drastic as a lockout of the staff.
Really?
So look,
yeah, that's a big step. We haven't seen that for a while on the wharves.
well, we haven't seen it since about April 1998, when Corrigan and Patricks did it with Howard and Reith in government.
Yep.
We did have a threat of it last year. So Switzer, the tugboat operator, had again ongoing industrial action, and they threatened a lockout. And at the 11th hour, it worked for Switzer. The Fair Work Commission did intervene, and did get the parties together. There was arbitration, and everything got sorted out. Happy days. Yeah. So, but now the other interesting thing is the CEO of Switzer at the time was a gentleman by the name of Nikolai Nose, and that's the same Nikolai Nose who's now the current CEO of DP World in Australia. So whether he's going to dust off the strategy that worked for him last time, but it's a high risk strategy. Absolutely. Because if the government doesn't intervene and the Fair Work Commission doesn't intervene, like they didn't do at Christmas time, well, then what do? Do they actually go ahead with their threat and lock out the staff? And if they do, well, that's not in anyone's interest, and I'd hate to imagine what happens next.
Well, Paul Zalai, I appreciate you having a chat to us this afternoon. I know you've got other commitments. We'll let you go and meet them. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Bye.
Paul Zalai, Director of Freight and Trade Alliance. Interesting insight into what's actually unfolding.